All the witnesses, I'd like to address this question to you. Will you please raise your hand if you would use products or services from Huawei or ZTE? None of you would. You obviously lead intelligence services, so that's something of a biased question. Raise your hand if you would recommend that private American citizens use Huawei or ZTE products or services. None of you, again, are raising your hand. Thank you for that.
Now, the people assembled in front of the lawmaker were the top national security officials of the United States, all at a hearing of the Senate Intelligence Committee back in February. Not a single one of them felt safe using products from the aforementioned Chinese phone company ZTE. They feared it would create a possible national security problem. But now, a few months later, President Trump wants those products sold here. Now, that would be a huge policy change and a 180, particularly from this president. Commerce Department had imposed a 7-year embargo. That after that company violated U.S. sanctions by selling equipment to, wait for it, Iran and North Korea. But now, the President of the United States says, never mind. Now, it all started with what else but a tweet on Sunday. Quote, President Xi of China and we are working together to give massive Chinese phone company ZTE a way to get back into business fast. Too many jobs in China lost. Commerce Department has been instructed to get it done! Exclamation point. And he also tweeted about the deal a day later after getting hammered for talking about Chinese jobs. Here is Monday's tweet. ZTE, the large Chinese phone company, buys a big percentage of individual parts from U.S. companies. This is also reflective of the larger trade deal we're negotiating with China and my personal relationship with President Xi. And, as they say, the plot thickens. This all happened right after China curiously made a deal in Indonesia that helps the Trump Organization. Here's how Vanity Fair describes it in an article that asks, is China straight up bribing Donald Trump? Quote, the president's total about-face on China came just 72 hours after the developer of a theme park outside of Jakarta, with whom the Trump Organization has an agreement to license its name, signed a deal to receive $500 million in Chinese government loans, in addition to another $500 million from government banks. The Trump Organization, they'll rake in almost $4 million in licensing and consulting payments, and the company will also earn management fees and be, quote, eligible for additional unspecified incentives, end quote. Now, the White House was asked specifically about that deal, and it dodged the question.
Can you tell or explain the administration's perspective on A, how this wouldn't violate the emoluments clause, and B, how it wouldn't violate the president's own promise that his private organization would not be getting involved in new foreign deals while he was president?
I'll have to refer you to the Trump Organization.
No, but I mean, the Trump Organization can't speak on behalf of the president as the president, the head of the federal government, the one who's responsible, who needs to assure the American people
and
that they don't have that responsibility.
But you're asking about a private organization's dealings that may have to do with a foreign government. That's not something that I can speak to.
Can I just say, I'm as guilty as anybody of not being shocked anymore. Not because I said it, but I fairly laid out the sequential facts that happened. The president, the same guy who says America first, that China was manipulating currency, that we were running trade deficits because they were an unequal and an unfair trade partner, etc. here. Our own national security team said these guys have violated embargoes, that, by the way, there was intellectual property infringements that were alleged against this group, all these other things. But the entire team with unanimity says national security problem dealing with these guys. The president all of us says, we're going to help them out because I'm concerned about the Chinese worker. And then, by the way, $4 million goes in my pocket. Something, forget that he promised he wouldn't do, that no president of any party I could even imagine doing, contemplating, let alone doing something like this. This is unbelievable, Scott.
It is, and it's very troubling on every level, except some of us, including me, try to step back. there are moving parts here that we're unaware of. One is Qualcomm and a whole series of tech companies in the United States depend on this company in China, okay? They depend on it buying their parts. Whether the company actually sells their final product here is a different story, which is still a national security issue. But in terms of how the United States responds, we have a lot of stake here in the United States to technology that's sold there, number one. Number two, it forces China to get that technology, which hurts ultimately the United States if we pursue this the way that President Trump tried to state he initially. We want to keep China beholden to those American companies. So to a degree, he's trying to play the game, which I think he's been playing, I think a little too loosely in my opinion, of trying to push and act hard and then try to find ways to negotiate a better trade. Three, and most importantly, China has the most influence on North Korea. And therefore, he's trying to placate and play up, I think, to North Korea. Does that make it right, especially the Indonesian investment? No. But there's a lot more going on.
I should mention one headline that happened when we came to air, Andrew, and I'll let you jump in. The North Koreans are now threatening to pull out of the bilateral talks here as we went to air with this. So whatever appeasement's going on certainly didn't make its way to Pyongyang.
I mean, your theory is plausible, but it makes it that much more complicated with the Indonesia aspect in the whole thing. The fact that he's pocketing $4 million, or that the Trump organization is pocketing $4 million, makes this that much more concerning. And the fact that the ZTE phones are considered security risks in the United States. Not that they would necessarily be sold here, but it seems like we'd be closer to approaching that. This is the result of a bunch of chickens coming home to roost when it comes to not putting this president's ethical problems in check. And the fact that we haven't had him quarantine his businesses, that we haven't had them put it in trust. The fact that other emoluments issues, including the Trump International Hotel in Washington, have never been fleshed out. Or that other questions related to other Trump properties in places like the UAE has never been investigated. And you leave these roads open, and eventually they're going to start going down.
Because you made the point when we did this, when there was that dog and pony show, when this issue came up. The president shows up with with a long table and stacks of papers. It turns out those were all blank pages. There was nothing there. And Washington, and I'm saying Congress, permitted this president to basically be taken at his word that he wouldn't do it. And then if we look at whatever ethics czars that we had in here, they've either quit or been pushed out as a consequence. Anyone that takes Donald Trump at face value that he'll do the right thing as it relates to policing himself and not look for self-enrichment, I have a bridge for sale.
And think of how many deals or potential deals are out there that we don't know about. I mean, this one is the most bald-faced, and it's right in front of us right now. But think of how many possible are out there. And this is, and I'll give it up to you in a second, but this is on congressional Republicans who have had the political responsibility of doing oversight on this White House.
That lawmaker we just played was a Republican senator from Arkansas, Tom Cotton. He's the one who made sure that they put on the record that no one in our national security team thought that this was an idea.
But I bet you Cotton didn't know that the Trump organization was about to do business involving some.
As important as the ethical issues are, and they are, and I think you're all right, there's a pattern emerging from these things. That Trump knows how to blow up deals. I don't care if it's Iran, I don't care if it's trade, I don't care if it's NAFTA, I don't care if it's the Paris Accords, but nothing seems to take its place. And what's really happening to the American people is that these deals, good, bad, or indifferent, people can disagree about that, are now being faced with the United States cutting the moorings that tie it to its allies and even to its enemies.
All the points you make are both fair, and I happen to agree with them. But when we're talking about foreign policy, there's a legitimate conversation. I mean, some can argue. Let the jury, let time play out. Trump may be considered a big winner in history as it relates to what may or may not happen with North Korea. We'll see what comes out of it. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about something different. Our founding fathers, the older I get, the more amazed I am by the prescience of the founding fathers and what they attempted to do to make sure that even if we had a competent one, that a tyrant could never emerge. And then moreover, that they tried to put things in place for people that I never could imagine could ever try and take the office of the presidency. I mean, what kind of, I can't even say the word, would literally make deals that endanger national security because he wants to put a few bucks in his pocket, and does it so transparently within 2 news cycles.
That's why we have an emoluments clause.
I know that, but apparently this president doesn't think it applies to him. And to Andrew's point, the shameful cowardice that the party that was the most steely spined of all of them are letting this blank get away with it.
There's a parallel story that's actually playing out now, or that's being fleshed out. Jared Kushner owns 666 Fifth Avenue, and it's drowning in debt. And he's been, apparently the family's been looking for financiers to help out with the debt. They reached out to Qatari financiers to try to see if they could get the money, and Qatar backed out. About 6 weeks or something like that after Qatar backed out, Saudi Arabia began a military blockade of Qatar, and Kushner and this administration backed Saudi Arabia in all of that. And there are some questions as to whether that was a pressure play on Qatar because they didn't finance the Kushner building, or whether Russian money got funneled through Qatar to eventually go to. I mean, it's not just this one example, and we dig hard enough, I would not be surprised if we found examples where military and foreign policy was involved.
I got 1 minute left. I agree with you. Can you just imagine for 1 second, the two of you? You as a county executive and you as state lawmaker, do you imagine if you took a stated position in your State of the County address that you were going to take position X because it was the best interest of the people of Rockland on Monday, and then on Wednesday you said, never mind, and that same company that you were saying were harming the residents potentially of your county, all of a sudden decided to buy you a summer house. And the same thing for you is you're making state policy, you're cracking down on something. This is the President of the United States. Both of you would be in front of the AG's office here, and they'd be grabbing you by the, with a perp walk. I mean, the idea that we're minimizing, not that you guys are, but that somehow this is normal or acceptable is crazy to me.
I don't think anyone disagrees with you.
I think they do, because this keeps happening. This will not be a news story by the end of this week.
That's why we have politicians as attorneys general, because they can sense when and where you have to check the political process.
Jeff Sessions going to do something about this?
Well, I'm talking Barbara
We have to
Underwood right now.
we now have to rely on whether Bob Mueller will add this to his growing
You're not going to get any
list.
disagreement from us.
It's crazy.
I don't disagree with you, and neither one of us would ever be in that situation, and it's wrong. But let me just, one thought, okay? There are lots of factors here that even as we report it and look at it, we need to take in consideration. Number 2.
Oh, wait, Scott, I'll let you finish. But have you seen anything, my friend, in 20 months to suggest that the president's about face on XTE was driven out of self-interest for American telecom companies and how they'll be impacted by this deal? Or do you believe that it was more principally, if not exclusively done, about getting funding that will go into the Trump corporation coffers? What do you think was the driving ambition?
I had always believed it was the former until recently the latter.
Thank you.
Okay. Having said that, though, this will not go away. I believe, even though this has never been litigated, I believe someone's going to bring a lawsuit, probably a civil lawsuit of some sort, on this subject. In fact, someone's already so these various things may be brought up. But in the meantime, there are all these larger issues, which is what I'm trying to focus on, as opposed to, a violation of the Constitution, which apparently it is.
It's just, I can't give him the benefit of the doubt, even if I want to, because I haven't seen a single instance where he's put country first. And to me, I've never seen that. You can disagree with George W. Bush, 41, 43, Clinton, Obama, but I never thought that what they did, even if I disagreed with the policies, were done to self-enrich rather than doing what they believed in. Anyway, I'm done. Coming up next, anyone want to take odds that sports betting doesn't come to your state? I'll take that bet. Will states like New York have to legalize sports books if neighbors like New Jersey do? Is it good or bad for the economy? And could it imperil maybe, I don't know, college athletics? We'll answer those questions after this.